Hey everybody, it's Matt Shares. Welcome to the SBI podcast. Our guest today is Simone Mouyal. He's the Chief Marketing Officer for Medidata Solutions Worldwide. Simone is recognized as one of the world's top 100 CMOs, and he actually just won the BMA Marketer of the Year, and he's appearing on our show. I really think you're going to enjoy this one.
From SBI's Executive Briefing Center in Dallas, Texas, the most watched and listened to content in B2B sales and marketing, it's the SBI podcast with your host, Matt Shares.
Welcome to the SBI podcast, a weekly show dedicated to helping you make your number. Today, we're going to demonstrate how to create an inspiring brand story that tells your strategic story through brand strategy and brand planning. So why this topic? Your competitors are making the same claims and same promises as you. They're probably even using the same words. So brands that are built on who you are, what you do, they don't result in above average revenue growth. Your brand impacts revenue growth when it gets activated by the sales force and it becomes uniquely relevant to your customers and your prospects. My name is Matt Shares. I'm the CEO of SBI, and I'm your host. Joining me in the studio is my beloved co-host, Melissa Valdez, and she is here to point you to resources to advance you along the way to making your number.
Why, thank you, Matt. I'm happy to be here, and welcome to our listeners.
All right, so our guest today, I got a little bit of marketing royalty on the show. So, our guest, Simone Mouyal, is the Chief Marketing Officer for Medidata Solutions Worldwide. So, Simone, welcome to the show, and please introduce yourself to the audience.
Thank you, Matt. Definitely a pleasure to be here with you today. As you can hear, my accent is French, not really New York, but I live and work in New York for Medidata. And as you said, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for about a year and a half now. But let me tell you a little bit about my journey. Before joining Medidata, I spent probably all my career in the tech space. Working in Paris for a big telco called Orange Business Services there, and then moving to HP doing hardware, and then moving to software for Microsoft, and then Microsoft moved me this time to Singapore to cover the business for Asia Pacific, and then in my career there is this kind of moment of truth when you say, okay, what's next? You worked for the largest telco, the largest hardware, the largest software company. What would be next? And this is when I received a call from Rackspace, which was one of the largest cloud company in the US. And I moved to Texas. So as you can imagine, after Paris, London, Singapore, San Antonio is a very friendly place, but was a little very different, I would say. Spending a few years there, leading marketing for Rackspace, and then a year and a half again, I moved to New York to join Medidata, and I run all marketing functions for this company, who's been founded about 16 years ago, with the single purpose of helping large pharma companies and medical devices companies to deliver their treatments or their devices to market faster. And that's I think the theme for today. How you connect the dots between a mission and a brand and your value proposition.
So even in that introduction, Simone, the clarity around which you answered what metadata does, right, in terms of speed and its delivery, and for the audience, we're spending this time talking about brand and how you activate that. Before I do that, though, Simone, I'm going to try to make you blush, because a little bunny told me that you won a few awards, but most recently, BMA 2017 Marketer of the Year. So we got to talk about that for like 15 seconds. And I can't pat you on the back from here, but if I was there, I got super big hands, so you can see me doing this. Talk a little bit about that award.
Yeah, it's funny. Thank you for first of all, that was a very good surprise, and again achievement in a career of a marketer. Just because this is the most prestigious award you can get in B2B. So it was a big moment for me. How you get there is when you have such a unique value proposition and brand that you created that does stand out from the market, from the rest of the competition, that was so unique and so inspiring, even for a B2B brand.
Yeah.
I think that was a great achievement. But we'll talk about it, I think, a little later, right?
Well, sincere congratulations, and I appreciate you taking the time to spend with us. So, Melissa, can you share with the audience, for those that want to follow along, how they might do that?
Yes, I would be happy to do that, Matt. And Simone, as a Texan, I am happy to give you the honor of being an honorary Texan for the time you spent here in San Antonio. So just have to bring that up for Texans. Texans are proud here, if you didn't notice. So for those of you in the audience, if you'd like to follow along, please refer to your 2018 How to Make Your Number workbook. We will be in the marketing section. Phase 4, brand strategy and planning, and you can find that on page 254.
All right, so let's jump into the questions. So Simone, you're a B2B marketer, and you've got this proven track record of driving leads to the sales force through demand generation. Obviously, brand is important to you. Why is that, and was there a compelling event that drove the need for a focus on brand? I mean, you've been in some big shops, big awareness, you jumped over to Rackspace, so talk a little bit about how you intersect those.
Yeah, no, definitely. There were some moments in my career where it did really make sense to clarify what's the unique value proposition and making sure it's different from the competition. So two maybe I can share with you. The first one was a pretty funny one. Just joined Microsoft, was in 2006. My first day, wasn't sure about what was my role and all of that, but I was doing marketing basically for them. And my boss telling me, oh, you know what, in 3 months, we're going to have the biggest launch in our product history, because it's going to be a joint launch of Windows Vista and Office. Don't remember having 2000 something, 13, I guess. And then guess what? Everyone knew that Windows Vista was not a great product. That was just a reality. Yep. So the mandate was, how can you make it the biggest, fastest launch ever for a product that's not going to be a huge adoption? So we just did. I was in Paris at that time, and it was about doing fireworks and a lot of animations and activities in the retail stores. So guess what? We had the fastest launch ever in our history for the first 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, it went down to, okay, that's not a great product. I want XP back. Yep. So I realized that whatever you do, if it doesn't match with the quality of your product and what the people in the retail stores will convey as a value proposition, and if it's not cool, that doesn't work. And that's the reality. So that was my first experience.
Yeah. What?
And
so Simone, what I find interesting on that, you sort of think about the compelling event in that story that drove the focus for the brand. You had a launch. So because of the launch, you were coalescing around that, and that was sort of your charter, if you will, to ensure that you drove the brand into the launch and the retail experience. So as our listeners are sort of translating this, going, how do I take this, and maybe I'm not at a size and scale of what Simone's doing, that's what you want to think about, I guess, from that. So Simone, maybe can I have you talk a little bit about the metadata brand promise, kind of pull that thread through as you think about where you were at Microsoft to now where you are at Medidata?
Yeah, absolutely. The mission of Medidata is very simple. It's to power smarter treatments and healthier people. So you get that. Say, okay, that's good. So I have the first segment is about helping my customers and partners to run better trials, very B2B. And then the second segment is about the outcome. We all want to get healthier people. And that's really much B2B2C. So the first challenge was how you marry B2B and B2B2C in a one single value proposition. Not easy. No. So what we've done is we had to define what we do and how we operate in our category. And that was very important. I know you mentioned category. The first thing you have to do to define your brand is to really clarify what category you're playing in, because that makes a big difference. What we do is we are in the e-clinical category, so we provide all the expertise, the software platform hosted in the cloud, and the data and analytics to really help running clinical trials. That's our category. This is what we do. And once we did that, we defined that, you know what, it goes down to one thing, which is accelerating trials.
Yeah.
So accelerating clinical research what became our B2B value proposition. Now, by doing that, we just say, hey, we don't do the clinical trials on your behalf, pharma companies.
Yeah.
We just enable you to run clinical trials.
Yep.
And then the feedback was, that's great, but it's, it doesn't really connect with the outcome. It doesn't really connect with patients. How we make it a little bit more, I would say, emotional about it. So we said, okay, nice. So what do we do as a community with our customers, partners? What's our goal? And we realized that we share the same goal, and the same goal is to create patients' hope. So when you marry accelerating clinical research and getting healthier people and accelerating patients' hope, you get to a value proposition that we created, and this is why we got this award. This BMA award is the architecture of hope. That's our value proposition. We are the architecture.
Wow. So what a great demonstration relative to the clarity that you not only talked about the brand, but you weaved in the brand promise guarantee, and you also talked about how you appeal to both the B2B customer and the B2B2C customer. So for those of you that are listening in, the clarity with which Simone articulated that, Simone, I don't know the probably hundreds of hours that went into getting there for you to have that clarity, but maybe if you can demonstrate or help the audience think through, how do you think about audience and what the Medidata brand does for them? Like you ripped that off with such clarity. How would you maybe help others get to that level of clarity?
So this is, when you think about our key persona, this is pretty clear that our usual persona are people who are involved in executing clinical research. And you have different roles. They don't really belong to the IT or central IT organization of our customers and partners. They are more sitting in the medical, scientific department in this organization. They are clinical operations people, data managers.
Yeah.
They are chief scientist officer, chief medical officer, another CMO. Actually, in my world, a CMO is a chief medical officer and not a chief marketing officer, which you can imagine put me in some complicated situation when I introduce myself.
Yeah, no kidding. You guys have slightly different backgrounds.
Yeah, just a little bit. And then we have biostatistician as well. So really people who are involved in making sure that science translates into a treatment, a drug, a medical device. So these are very different persona. They are involved in very different steps of this clinical trial process.
Yep.
And we want to make sure that we are relevant to them. What's really making a difference is not only this umbrella value proposition does resonate with all of them, with each of them, but it's also a good way for us to remain very focused on what we are good at. And what we are good at is we live and breathe life science. That's what makes us unique. You mentioned about how do you differentiate your value proposition when everyone is saying the same thing. Yeah. We did this exercise. Yeah. We looked at all the websites of our competitors, and then we removed the logo. Even myself, sometimes I wasn't sure if it was which company was saying the same. We were claiming, all of us were claiming, and most of them are still claiming the same thing, to basically run faster, safer, cheaper trials. Everyone was claiming the same thing. So how you help your persona, your customers and partners to really make a choice based on what they are looking for. And we put in front and center what is our expertise about life science and the I would say the holistic platform, integrated platform that we have of capabilities.
Wow. So as you, for the marketing folks that are moving up the maturity curve, a couple of things that you would take away from what Simone talked about, and we're going to take a quick break on this first segment. The first is, I love the fact of stripping away all the websites and looking at the sea of sameness, because it's like you guys kind of shook yourself awake and said, we're actually not that different. So that was one. I think two is you mentioned probably 3 or 4 times without even knowing it, you talked about personas. You talked about your customer, their care-abouts, if you will. So I think the clarity of being outward in relative to brand promise, and the brand promise guarantee, that was great. So we're going to take a quick break from the interview, and Melissa is going to share with you a tool. She has all kinds of tools. She's going to share with you a tool that you can leverage.
So this fantastic tool that I'm excited to share with you today is our revenue growth diagnostic. So some of you out in the audience may have received your target for the year and you're wondering, how am I going to make my number? Well, we have created a web-based self-assessment for you where you can compare yourself against the go-to-market strategies of industry leaders. So this is very exciting. And the output of that is actually a roadmap to help you gain clarity on how you're going to make your number this year.
Fantastic. All right, you're listening to the SBI podcast. I'm your host, Matt Scherz, and today's guest is marketing royalty, Simone Mouyal, the CMO for Medidata Solutions. And today, Simone and I are demonstrating how to create an inspiring brand that tells your strategic story. Not a strategic story, your strategic story. So we're going to jump back into the questions. So, Simone, how do you ensure that the key value prop of the brand reflects what's in the corporate DNA?
So, it's interesting because from the mission to what you connect and communicate to your customers, you have to define what are the components of this DNA, and it has to be defined. This does not only say about who you are and why you do things, but also what makes us unique. So we had this exercise as well to think about if I have to tell you in 5 different points what is driving us as a company, as a team. There are 5 things. And again, living and breathing life science means we know what life science is. One of our co-founder is a scientist. He comes from there. So he's been there. He knows what researchers are struggling with when they want to put a drug into the market. And it's not an easy step. It takes years to get there. So understanding exactly what are their pain points. And I'm talking about chief medical officers, data managers, clinical ops, biostatisticians, researchers. They can be for-profit, they can be academic, they all have the same issues. How we can make sure that we put in their hands tools that are not adding a layer of complexity, but that just making their life easier is very important. So that's the first, let's say, node of our DNA. Yeah. And then the second one is, if you know what's the clinical trial process, you know that it doesn't stop there. Actually, if you want to run a trial, then you work with large pharma companies and researchers, and then you have to work with what we call site investigators. It can be clinic, hospitals, doctors, nurses, who are basically receiving the request from the large pharma company or researchers who are leading a clinical trial and asking, hey, I need to find patients. Can you help me to identify these patients that will help to run this clinical trial? We also need to understand that is a tough job. Yeah. So the second node is about healthcare professionals. The third node, which is in the center, is patient. How we help patients to be, first of all, identify the right clinical trial and be part of the trial that's going to go smoothly and fast. Yeah. And that's going to be successful too. One data point to keep in mind that few people really know is that when you look at the overall clinical trials that are run today, less than 10% will be successful. Through the whole process, less than 10%. So how we can help to make it happen. And then the fourth node is about our aspiration to get a better technology for our customers and partners. So how we invest 25% of our R&D in technology and every year is very important. And then the last one is about our community, how we work as an ecosystem. It's not only about us; it's about us and our partners. So these 5 nodes are really our DNA: life science, healthcare professionals, patients, aspirations, and future.
So Simone, I mean, I can't help, this concept that people are working on as marketeers, and for sales leaders listening, going, brand, that's squishy, right? Isn't that something that Coke and Frito-Lay worry about. Like, you just went through these 5 points, and a picture came through in my mind as you were articulating it. So is that the concept of the 360-degree picture of the world that a brand lives in? So if yes, how did you get that level of clarity walking in day one?
So, it took a bit of time, unfortunately, a couple of months to get there.
Hey man, come on, you're an award winner. You wear a cape. Let's go.
So let's say it took a couple of months. But the interesting thing is how to connect the dots between marketing and sales is extremely critical.
Yeah.
If you don't find a way to rally them around something that they can be very proud of, that's part of their culture. Yeah. That's basically helping them to explain to their mom what they are doing in their professional life. Yeah. That's the goal. So the reality is not only the architecture of hope and this DNA definition help our sales partners to come to a conversation with our customers and partners and say, hey, this is what we do, and this is why we are different. So if you're looking for expertise, a platform, and data, we're going to make sure that these ingredients will be delivered to you in a very relevant way if you're an healthcare professional, a patient, or a life science company. Now, for sure, awareness, driving thought leadership, positioning is very important. What was the very next step for us is to really create a campaign structure to really drive demand, to convert from awareness, top of the funnel, to creating leads and opportunities. We had, with this campaign, the Architecture of Hope, we were very fortunate to see that this company is standing out way more than the average campaigns that you have in the market, both on online and social media. Yeah. So we are having a very, very high returns. That helps to generate more leads and opportunity for our sales team.
You know, two things resonated from what you said. The first one, you were talking about trying to explain it to your mom. For the last decade, my mother, Barbara, and I love her to pieces, I tell her that we're a management consulting firm, and we help people, grow faster than their industry and their peers. And she kind of looks at me with this stare. I'm like, Mom, how about this? We help people sell more stuff. She's like, oh, okay, Matthew, that sounds good. But I love the clarity that you talked about, the brand architecture getting pulled into lead generation. So how do you then take that and sort of evaluate the effectiveness of the brand to say it's working, it's not working, we need to reposition or rebrand? How does that work?
So that's very interesting. It's a very, I think for those of you who are listening to us, I mean, it took me years to really let go a little bit about this big goal of a marketer to deliver the perfect campaign with the perfect pitch and the perfect message, and spending months to do all these interviews and surveys. And then after 6 months, maybe if you're lucky, you have something that's good, and you spend the other next 6 months to really measure if it's working. That was my life for many years. And I did let go. And I tell you why. So many times I look at different creative concepts and campaign concepts, and I was picking the wrong one. I was just picking the wrong one. So, two things are important. The fact that I live in a world where clinical trial is all about testing things. It's all about testing different hypotheses, different scenarios. So as a marketer, this is exactly what I do now. I do not decide on behalf of my customers and partners and my persona what they will like better. So my operating model today is to define 2 or 3 creative concepts that will totally match and fit and embrace the overall value proposition and umbrella branding. But then I put them into market, and I focus my team to really be able to measure the success of each campaigns. And the one that's working better, then we amplify it. The one that doesn't work, then we just kill it.
Yep. So audience members, I guess the conviction through which Simone was articulating what I would sort of repackage as there's an operating model. It's about revenue marketing, but it's also about rapid iteration. And what you heard him talk about is we're measuring, we're testing, we're learning, and we're going again. So Simone, that was a fantastic demonstration. So we're going to take another quick break. Melissa's got something else that she's going to share with you, our audience, to help you make your number.
Yes, I do, Matt, and this is why Simone received his Marketer of the Year award, right?
I think so.
Great stuff here. If you like what you're hearing in terms of what Simone has said and you need some help, the SBI team of experts is here to help you. I'll go with another Texas reference. I'm sorry about that, but I've got to plug our brand new Executive Briefing Center, the studio, located here in Dallas, Texas. We would be thrilled to host you and your executive team for a interactive workshop on this topic or any topics of interest to you. To get a feel for what's covered in these workshops, go to sbi.tips/2018 workbook.
Fantastic. All right, this is our last segment with Simone demonstrating how to create an inspiring brand that tells your strategic story. So we're going to jump back into the questions. So Simone, you think about your time in your life as a marketer, and you're trying to get the sales force to live the brand in every interaction with customers, prospects, and partners. How do you do that?
So it's really something that sits in my product marketing function today. Once we define our brand, once we define the high-level positioning of what does Medidata and what we do it, why we do it better, then the next step is to package it in a way that my sales partners can really bring it to different conversations. So when you are at Medidata, you probably have 16 to 20 different products. So you don't want a product level pitch. When you look at different pain points that our customers have, you can probably package them around 6 or 7 solution areas where that does really matter. In our world, things around precision medicine, value-based care, how you use artificial intelligence to run better trials, what kind of predictive analytics you can put in place, how you help operational performance and execution of clinical trials. These are some of the big solution areas and conversation that we want to enable. Yep. So what we help to do is to elevate from a product pitch into a more solution capability conversation.
Got it.
That's going to be not only something that can open the conversation to more cross-selling business opportunities for our sales partners, but also demonstrate our credibility, our expertise in this area. Yep. And this is how we do it. So sales enablement, product marketing working together pretty closely. And there is a very defined list of, let's say, assets or materials that we are committing to deliver and to maintain. I would say the first one is what we call a battle card. That will make a big difference because it's what we do, how we do it, and also put it into perspective of what is the competition in the market.
Yep.
We have customer-facing decks. We have sales training deck. We have definitely something that we articulate around white paper, ebook, to really bring more thought leadership and being a leave behind as well after the meeting. These are some of the examples of how we help our salespeople to feel empowered and enabled.
That's fantastic. So, I mean, you think about the connection between product marketing and corporate marketing and the sales force, and what you just articulated very effortlessly, I might tell you, was all these different modes of enablement and all these different modes of messaging around consistency, sort of making sure that the sales force has what they need when they need it, but also the interlock internally at Medidata, which I think so many of the audience struggle with, Simone, right? It's like marketing's running down a silo and sales is running down a silo, and they're frustrated with each other. People hear brand, they don't know what that means. You have a very purposeful way that you're activating the brand. It's obviously driving, a lot of results. So let me I guess double click on that and understand, what's the brand impression like? How are you different from that of your competitors?
So we think that being a very specialized, focused company in what we do, clinical research, in our space, life science, makes us different. And that's a big difference. So, sometimes when you talk about what's your value proposition, it goes down to what you sell, basically software. That's not that, right? I mean, if you really want a truly integrated value proposition, it has to be capabilities supported by software, but it has to be expertise. If you don't have the expertise to implement, help, drive adoption, it doesn't really make sense.
Yep.
So speaking the same language with our customers and partners is definitely important, and that's why I think we see such a high growth for us. The other thing that's very important too, as well, is data. Data are critical in our space, but in most of the other businesses I had a chance to work in.
Yeah.
The interesting thing that we have at Medidata is we really look at all the historical data that we accumulated across all the different clinical trials and researches that we've done in the past, and we turn it into something that's going to drive insights for all our customers and partners. And that makes a huge difference, because there are different ways, much more optimized, much faster, to really drive insights and help to reduce the burden for patients or the time to execute a clinical trial for sites. That's very important.
Wow. So, Simone, what I take again from that answer is the precision and the clarity that you have around the personas you're serving, both external and even internally, and then activation. You talked about data, right? You talked about consuming it and multiple different functions consuming it and making decisions, and then driving towards outcomes, as opposed to driving towards, hey, we provide software. It's like, who cares, right? You got to carry that thread all the way through to its logical conclusion. Fantastic. So last question, and what's been a trip through brand school for many of our listeners. What's the core opportunity for brand relevance, and how do you think about differentiation that's going to inspire the strategic story for Medidata?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when you work for B2B in a very specific industry, in a vertical, then we have a pretty high mind share. I mean, everyone knows Medidata. And I would say probably everyone knows our core product, which is an electronic data capture product. We used to be called the Rave company because the name of this product was Rave. So you could ask sometimes, okay, do you know Medidata? People will say no, but do you know Rave? Oh yeah, I know Rave. So I had this kind of a challenge to turn the Rave company into the architecture of hope company, which is Medidata. The reality is, when you're in this industry, the only thing you can do is to really make sure that every single opportunities to engage with your customers and partners is not a one-off. Becomes an experience. I've seen many companies in the tech industry. Salesforce is probably the best example. Microsoft has done a good job. Even another Seattle-based company like Tableau Software, where you create communities. And that, I think, is the next level of the brand engagement, is making sure that you have an ongoing engagement with your key persona in a very contextual and relevant way. Can be online, can be offline. And then our goal today is to culminate all of that with some own branded, Medidata branded own conferences that we do around the world, when it becomes the right rendezvous for everyone, where we can not only talk about what's the future, but also have pleasure to meet together, because we were talking to each other for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Boy, Simone, what I love about what you just said, you talked about the consistency of the experience, but the creation of online and offline communities. So there's always things whenever we do these interviews and these shows where the audience will hear something from a guest like you and be like, "Ooh, that one resonated." So I think that one's got to that one's going to certainly resonate with our audience. So I can't thank you enough. I mean, what a great demonstration, and I just appreciate you contributing to our body of knowledge in this area. And obviously, I appreciate the audience tuning in. So Simone, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
And audience members, Melissa has one more thing before we go.
Yes, thank you, Simone. And speaking of communities, Matt, we want you, our listeners, to be a part of the SBI community. If you are not previously registered with us, please go to salesbenchmarkindex.com/register. If you've ever engaged with SBI, you know that everything we do is custom, so you can customize your experience with SBI. You can select the topics of interest to you and when you want to receive content.
Perfect. All right, everybody, that's it for today. So great demonstration by Simone. So big thank you from the SBI community. And as always, until next time, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on the studio, SBI's Executive Briefing Center, our team, or to schedule a workshop, please visit salesbenchmarkindex.com.